Now there are many types of equanimity. Equanimity is a mental state, all right? It is a mind state, and there are wholesome equanimity, there are unwholesome equanimity, right? And equanimity, the wholesome one, is considered as balance of mind. It's a wholesome mental state. It can also be a feeling. When you talk about equanimity feelings, feeling means happy feeling, sad feeling, and equanimity feelings, right? So the part in our practice which I want to repeat again today is, in meditation when we develop mindfulness, we always talking about equanimity. When you observe your rising and falling, then mindfulness with equanimity. You neither attach to your breathing in or out, or feelings too. Where there's painful feeling, where there's itchiness, where there is lightness of the body, you're supposed to be mindful and equanimity. Looking evenly, equanimity, not attaching or rejecting them. Same way with your mind. Mind is restless. You're not supposed to be annoyed. You're not supposed to be angry or discontent or remorse. You're supposed to note your mind evenly. Mindful, note your mind, running, or watch your mind, what type of mind arises and passes away. Now that is the equanimity, all right? So we practice that in our formal meditation, but in daily life, we have to apply the same way that we practice in the formal. Daily life, we call it the informal. We don't sit quietly without moving, but in daily life, we are exposed to all our senses. So it is therefore more difficult to practice in daily life than to practice in the formal meditation alone in your room by yourself. But you need to practice the same way, meaning to say mindfulness and equanimity, right? When you see objects, when you hear people talking, sound, or when you smell, or when you're eating, or you're feeling the body sensation, you're supposed to be mindful and equanimity. Now, if you do that, then the equanimity will become stronger and stronger, and it becomes the factors of enlightenment. In other words, it becomes developed. You practice in this way. So you need to remind yourself very often when you're becoming disturbed with what you see. Then you say, okay, there is no equanimity in me. That's what the Buddha says to the monk. Then a meditator knows there is no equanimity in me. Why? Because there is anger. The mind don't like unpleasant sound or unpleasant sight. Then when you notice it, and you say to yourself, aware, mindful, equanimity, then the mind becomes still and peaceful, right? Then the meditator say to himself, there is this equanimity in me, this factor of equanimity in me. Now there's always this importance of recognition. In the practice of meditation, you have to recognize what is happening within you, around you, or outside you. You have always to be aware and recognize what is this object. Right. So as you recognize this equanimity, because it is essential for enlightenment. If the mind is not balanced, the mind is always disturbed, it is not equanimity, then you could not gain insight. Right? So you need to practice as you do here in the hall. The formal type of meditation, you apply the same way in your daily life. Mindfulness, equanimity. Alright? Now to continue on to this subject. In the Vimutti Magga, Vimutti, the path of freedom, and it was stated, what are the salient characteristics of equanimity? The salient means noticeable. It means important, or what is the main characteristics? So the answer is equipoise, mental balance, equipoise. Not leaning towards attachment or grief. So, explain in the path of freedom means that equanimity means that it is mental balance, not leaning towards attachment or grief. So, when you view things, equipoise, when you hear things with equipoise, that means not attraction nor rejection. When you view things with, what is this object? It is sound. It is what sound? It is pleasant sound. Or it is unpleasant sound. Or it is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So once you do not at once grab at the object. Once you grab at the object, if it is pleasant, then it clings. If it is unpleasant, then it rejects. So, in that way, there is no balance of mind. The mind is not balanced because it is leaning to either right or left. The left side, rejection, right side, the clinging. And every time our mind reaches up to the object, it attaches on to the object. Like the food that touches the tongue, the mind tastes. Is it pleasant taste? Is it unpleasant taste? So it is tasting the object. Now every time the mind reaches towards the objects of seeing or hearing or smelling, it tastes the object. So it grabs onto the object and it tastes the object. And so, therefore, it goes out of balance. So what is needed? Detachment is needed. Only when there is mindfulness, detachment, then arises the balance of mind. Mind just observe object as object. Now this is what you practice in your meditation. Itchiness, you know, itchiness, itchiness. Pain, you know, pain, pain, pain. The body has very nice sensation, very light. You know, the mind is peaceful, you know, peacefulness, peacefulness, peacefulness. Then you know. So it is this detachment, that is required for this balance of mind. So in daily life, you try to practice balance of mind by detachment, observation. Then you could have balance of mind. What is the function of equanimity? The function is not attachment. Looking on evenly. Now this is called the detachment. looking on evenly without being distracted, without the clinging on to object. So that is the function of equanimity mind. So when there is equanimity mind, there is detachment. Without detachment, there cannot be equanimity mind. And what is the manifestation of equanimity? What is the manifestation? If you have equanimity in your mind, what does is the manifest? It manifestation as non-action or inaction, non-grasping at objects. Now, an equanimity mind, if somebody were to scream and shout at you, now if the mind is equanimity, then there is non-action. Then you say, hey, you're like a block of wood. Scold you, also no reaction. There is no action. The mind is equanimity. The mind is nothing. Okay, that is harsh words. That is unpleasant words. That is rough words. There is no action. When there is an action, when people scold you, you think you are very good. They say, you think you are good. You think you are best. What about you? So whenever there is a reaction, when you answer back with ill will, there is no balance of mind unless you answer back with wisdom. But when it is an unpleasant object, it is difficult to answer back with wisdom. Normally, the reaction, cause and the reaction. There's always a cause, there's always a reaction. Unpleasant objects always receive unpleasant return. So you get an ill will. So there is action. Now in this case, the manifestation of equanimity normally is non-action. You just observe. It is a pleasant object. It is not disturbed with pleasant object. It is unpleasant object. It is not disturbed with unpleasant object. It is object that is neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Again, he is not disturbed with neutral object. So that is the manifestation of equanimity. Alright? Now what is the near cause? What is the near cause? What is the cause of this equanimity arising? The nearest to it. Dispassion is near cause. Means that the mind is not seeking for enjoyment nor for repellent. The mind is not searching to look for trouble. That is the near cause. Now when the mind is always prepared, looking for trouble, looking for problem, then there would be no equanimity. Am I always thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to hit back? What am I going to do something if he prepare myself, if he's trying to hurt me? So the mind is constantly in a state of passion, in a state of seeking this near cause is dispassion. That means in the case of passion. So the near cause is dispassion. Now we come to the third part. Any question before I come to the third part? Any questions so far? Equanimity, do you want me to explain some more? There are unwholesome equanimity that is couldn't care less. So this equanimity arises in ignorant mind. He just no action, but he just doesn't do anything, but he just don't care. Like you say, let's go listen to the Dhamma talk, let's go meditate. He just don't care. He just look at you, no action. Also no action, but equanimity, but this is unwholesome one. There's no action, right? But he doesn't care to look for knowledge. What is wholesome? Just couldn't care. So it is unwholesome type of equanimity. Couldn't care less. And when you talk about equanimity in feelings, then it is different. Balance of mind, equanimity, and also equanimity of feelings. They are happy or neutral. And a balanced mind can never experience the feeling that is negative, that is ill will, that is painful. No, when you experience a mind that is associated with anger, ill will, sadness, remorse, then you know that this is unpleasant mental feeling. There is no equanimity in my mind. Right? So what do? You have to bring out the equanimity in your mind, then it will disappear. When equanimity, mental balance, arises in your mind, then the imbalances is not there. Any question? No question, I continue on. The third part of this upekha is to generate upekha. If it is not there, what should you do? First, you know. If it is not there, you know. If it is there, you know. Then if it is not there, then how do you generate, prompt, bring out the equanimity or make it strong in your mind? Now this is from the commentaries. This is called the commentaries. Now there are these books that are called commentaries, then there are sub-commentaries, there are sub-commentaries. So these are supposed to be learned monks. Monks who are very learned, and what is not found in the book taught by the Buddha, or some subtle things that are not clear, then there is these commentaries. There are some well-known monks, highly educated monks, then they give comments. When a question is asked, then they answer or give comments to the question. So this is from the commentaries. A meditator cultivates detachment towards people and things. He says that. Cultivate detachment to people and things. In other words, monks are not supposed to get close to lay people. That is why sometimes you find monks very aloof. Aloof means unfriendly. Sometimes you find certain monks, you think they are stuck up. But no, that is their vinayas. That is what a monk should do. Should not get too close to lay people. And of course, you ask me why? Because they get influenced by lay people. When they get very close to lay people, and lay people has a lot of family problems, and they keep talking to the monks about family problem, and then it affects the monks. And when a monk become very friendly to lay people, then they become like very close friend, and then they go to the cafeteria or to the makan shop and sit there, eat together. Like kawan-kawan already, very close friend already. So there becomes no big and small. A monk is supposed to be big, so that when he give Dhamma talk, then people will listen. Now if they are the same level, then people would not listen to them. So even sitting at the same level, a monk will have an extra cloth. Then you will take out his cloth, then you put on the floor, even the same level. You have an extra cloth and sit on it, then only he can talk Dhamma. Otherwise he cannot talk Dhamma. If they are sitting together, same level, a monk is not allowed to give you Dhamma talk. So, that is monk practicing upekha, indifference, like, oh, that is family problem, nothing to do with me, I'm a monk. So that is supposed how a monk should practice equanimity. Not only to people, but also to objects. Objects, You cannot go around saying, wow, this object is so beautiful, Where you bought it, How much it costs, Explain to me why it's so beautiful, No, a monk should never say that. seeing object, smelling, tasting, or a monk cannot say, wow, today you cook the food you give to me so delicious. What did you put into it? Please explain. Now a monk should not ask such type of question. Should be detached. It is just food, tasting. You should not say, what is this special thing that you put in, never seen before? No, monk should never ask such thing. So a monk practice detachment. But for lay people, a bit difficult. Right or not? Bit difficult for us to do it. But for a meditator who wants to practice, cultivate very strong equanimity, then he should not be so attached to the food, attached to what he eats, attached to what he sees, attached to what he hears, attached to what he smells, attached to what he thinks. Concept. Alright? Then, number B, avoid people who are prejudiced. Prejudice means people who are always negative. So, because it could influence your mind and makes you negative as well, makes you unbalanced. Number 4, associate with impartial people, of course. If you mix with people who are impartial, then you become more impartial. It is always the saying that we always mix with people with the same feathers, something like that. If a gamblers, they would like to mix with gamblers, right? A golfer will like to mix with people who is a golfer. True? So it is people like to mix with the same type of people. So direct the mind towards arousing and establishing equanimity factors of enlightenment. Arouse the mind. In other words, in your daily life, you have to keep note of your mind, whether your mind is balanced. Once your mind is disturbed, you know it is not balanced. Then you know that, okay, my mind is not balanced, and try to bring out your mindfulness and practice balance. Now, how do you practice balance? Tell yourself, let go. We Chinese always say, big problem become small problem become no problem. And I heard my father, mother say that a lot of times. In big trouble, you just equanimity, you just don't bother much about it. Then becomes small problem. And small problem, you don't bother much about it. Then it becomes no problem. Right? So you just say, let go. Don't take things into your heart. Just let go. That is where metta is important. We need to practice more kindness, loving kindness, to have an equanimity mind. So, the fourth part of the instruction is how to maintain equanimity. So, you try to maintain it by constantly reflecting and looking into your mind, whether it is presence or absence. If it is absence, then you bring out your mindfulness and try to say, okay, never mind, let go. If somebody harm you, somebody do something bad, you just remind yourself that whatever he does, he carries. I go through the Vimutti Magga, the 7 enlightenment factors, as written here in the scriptures. How are the 7 enlightenment factors fulfilled? Through the practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. If the yogin is the meditator, yogin, practices the 4 foundations of mindfulness, is able to abide non-confused in mindfulness. This is called the enlightenment factors of mindfulness. So the first one that we have gone through is mindfulness. So how does we develop mindfulness? By establishing the four foundation of mindfulness. And when we establish the four foundation of mindfulness, we are not confused. We can see things clearly. We call it, with detachment, we develop this clarity of mind. You can see things clearly. And the second part is that yojin, abiding in mindfulness, investigates subjection to ill, impermanence, and phenomena. This is called the enlightenment factors of inquiry in two stages. Now this book uses different type of words. Dhamma Vichaya, we call it the Dhamma investigation or look deeply. Now because of there is this mindfulness, the mind able to look deeply into the objects. So in other words, when mindfulness is developed, then the Dhamma Vichaya becomes developed. Mind able to look deeply into this mind and body. If there is no mindfulness, if the mindfulness is not strong, then a yojin will not be able to do that. Now this is going step by step, explaining step by step how one factors influence the other mental factors, the other factors of enlightenment, and thereby developing equally, strengthen the 7 factors of enlightenment leading to insight. Alright? And so, inquiring into the states, thus, he strives earnestly without slackening. This is called the enlightenment factors of exertion. Exertion. Now we are talking about the virya. Virya means the effort. Effort. Now because there's mindfulness developed and because of investigation, then comes the energy that is aroused through this investigation. They call it the mental energy, or effort is aroused, effort is developed. Now that is when you constantly look into your rising, falling. If it is not there, then there is these feelings arising, painful or non-painful or itchiness. Then you direct your mindfulness into these feelings. And as you direct, you keep on watching it. Now that is where the energy is maintained and developed as you direct your mind towards the four foundation, whether it's mind, looking, feeling, looking at the body. So that's how the energy becomes stronger. Alright? It's developed. Then again, the scripture says, developing exertion, he arouses joy that is clean. This is called the enlightenment factor of joy. Developing exertion, he arouses joy that is clean, means wholesome joy. So when the assertion, the effort is strong, then concentration develops, samadhi. When concentration develops, joy arouses. Whenever there is peacefulness of mind, there is joy. You feel very pleasant, feel very peaceful, you feel very happy. Now this is joy, mental joy, because you are peaceful. But if you think a lot of things, you think about this, think about that, think about feeling, think about your job, think about your business, your collection, then there is no joy arising because there is no calmness. There's a lot of agitation. Even just thinking about business, there's a lot of agitation. You want to do this, do that, but you have not achieved it yet. Unless when you have achieved what you think you want to do, then you have a sense of satisfaction. Then you could have momentary peace of mind. Otherwise, if the mind is the constant moving, constant doing, constant thinking, then there would be no peace. Right? So concentration is when the mind becomes still. Mind do not constantly think of doing, becomes still. Peaceful, then joy arises. Through the mind being full of joy, his body and mind are endowed with calm. This is called the enlightenment factors of calm. Now, just now, I explained that the calmness of mind brings up joy. Alright? And the joy, in turn, brings out more concentration. When you sit in meditation and you feel very peaceful and calm, you are able to sit for a long time. And when you're able to sit for a long time, concentration becomes more strong. At first, it is the concentration that produces the joy. In other words, it is just the lower level of concentration. When it gets to a certain level of calmness, joy arises. And when joy arises, becomes strong because of that concentration, you are able to sit long, and the concentration deepens, becomes stronger and stronger. So sometimes you cannot say A come first, then come B, B come first, then come C. So it is all grouping together. It comes as a group. One influences the other. So it is a combination that if one is strong, then it can pull up and make the other strong. But the absence of one, then the whole thing collapses. It's like a main pillar like that. Like mindfulness is the main pillar, starting point. No mindfulness, there is no factor at all. So you see the importance of mindfulness. So in meditation, you need to develop lots and lots of mindfulness. It's the starting point of this realization, where the other factors develop by way of progression, step by step. One influences the other to arise and become strong. Okay? So, this is called, through calmness, this body attains to ease, and this mind is possessed of concentration. This is called the enlightenment factor of concentration. Owing to concentration, the mind acquires equanimity. This is called the enlightenment factors of equanimity. Thus, because of the practice of fourfold foundation of mindfulness, the 7 enlightenment factors are fulfilled. So, how are freedom and wisdom fulfilled? Through the practice of the 7 enlightenment factors. In other words, the wisdom of the path and fruition of freedom is thus because of the practice of 7 enlightenment factors. Wisdom, freedom are fulfilled. Now we talk about these concentration, that because of concentration there is this equanimity. Now, this is something new. Because of concentration, there is this equanimity. Right? Now, this equanimity that is talking about is the equanimity of these sankhara upekkha, insight of the equanimity. When concentration is developed and becomes strong by way of mindfulness, then the mind reaches to equanimity. Very strong balance of mind, which is very important for enlightenment. Right? So, without this concentration, you cannot develop to this insight wisdom called equanimity. So, in this book, it is talking about the equanimity that is not the lower type of equanimity, but the developed form of equanimity that is very developed, very strong, that objects could not disturb the mind, and the mind could see the object clearly because mind is detached and clearly could see the object, and therefore could see the characteristics of the object. The object characteristic is always there, but it is because we do not have these enlightenment factors in our mind, we cannot see the object clearly. Sometimes we see it, sometimes we don't. And what we see is the gross type of the characteristics. But we can't see the subtle types. The subtle types, then you say, that means to say that only when we see the subtle type can we gain enlightenment? Why is it so? That we see the gross one, we can't gain enlightenment, but only the subtle one? The subtle one means that the 7 factors of the mind is highly developed and we can see the subtle one. That indication that the factors is highly developed and we can see the subtle characteristics. But if we see the gross characteristics, means to say that we have not developed the 7 factors strongly, so we can only see the gross. Now in all the objects, internally or externally, there is these 3 objects that are constant change, that it is subject to dissatisfaction or suffering, and it is substanceless. It is there. But the gross one we can see. Most people can see the gross change. We see ourselves as a baby, now we are grown up, and now we are growing old, and we can also gauge and expect that one day we pass away. Now we can see that in ourselves. We can see that in other people. A friend, long time I have not seen him, and one look, he looked at me and was startled and very surprised. He said, "Brother James, you are so old, you got white hairs." Then I smiled at him. I said, "Of course lah, what do you think? What do you expect? You expect me to have red hairs? Of course white lah. But he never expect that. He always think of me as young, because when we are friends, that time we are young, and so he always have the sanya, the image in his mind. When he think about me, think of me as young, all black hairs. But suddenly he was startled when he see me white hairs. So we can see impermanence, we can see suffering, or we can perceive, not see with the eye. We can think a lot of suffering. We experience that ourselves, so we can perceive a lot of suffering. And the question is, why then are we not enlightened? Right or not? Why can't we be enlightened? Some of us see a lot of suffering, experience a lot of suffering in our life. We always know this is suffering, that is a lot of burden. Going to work is a lot of suffering. You don't like your boss, you see his face, there's a lot of suffering. And sometimes, of course, associate with unpleasant people give you a lot of suffering. We encounter a lot of suffering. And how come we do not gain enlightenment? Because the factors are not developed, they are not strong. We cannot penetrate to the gross or to the subtle. Now, even if the factors are highly developed, just the gross object, we can gain enlightenment. Just a falling leaf, before it touches the floor, he become an arahant. Like the Reverend Ananda, he was practicing very hard, walking the whole day and until very late, and he couldn't gain enlightenment. And he say, "I need a rest. I'm too tired." And so he sat down and lie down to sleep. And before his head touches the pillow, he became an arahant. He's the only monk who gained enlightenment when his head is halfway in the mid-air before touching the pillow. So any moment we can gain enlightenment. Gross object or subtle object, when the 7 factors of enlightenment are fully developed. An indication that the factors of enlightenment are developed is when we start able to perceive subtle objects. That is where we look into our body, rising, falling. Instead of seeing the whole process of rising, we can break it into small pieces. You see every moment of its rise. The mind starts to see subtle objects. Then we say, how come we are not enlightened? Still we are in the process of enlightenment. We are still practicing. It is not strong enough. And just as we see our feeling arising and disappearing, it will become pain, become numb. There is no more feeling, sensation. So the process, pain can be a very gross object, but the process of the disappearing could be a very subtle object. And sometimes people can see it's arising, but cannot see it's disappearing. Like this question in the beginning of the meditation session. This meditation teacher says that in the constant arising, there is no disappearing, but it is not so. He could only see the arising, but he could not see the disappearing. So he has this view that there is karma, but there is no vipaka. There is this constant action, but there is no reaction. So in the constant action, where is the reaction? There cannot be reaction in the constant action. Now that is his view. That is his experience. He could see the constant arising, but he cannot see the disappearing. Sometimes the disappearing becomes so subtle that it needs more stronger factors. The factors need to be developed stronger to see it's disappearing as well, to see it's arising, to see disappearing. So I always try to, I always say that if you can't see the whole process of arising, continue and disappearing, doesn't matter, just take one. Just take the arising and make it clear, or take the disappearing and make it clear, or take the whole process in between the arising and disappearing, make it clear, so that it could prompt the arising, so it could prompt, develop, make the 7 factors of enlightenment stronger, and it could prompt from the continuous, you could see the disappearing. Alright? So this is a very deep subject, but there is no choice. You have to understand this, right?